Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where we say you can fuck with the factory workers. You can screw with the farmers, but by God, going after the video gamers, that's just a bridge too far. So I think this is an interesting story just because it shows the practical ramifications of Trump's policies, and it shows it in a relatively transparent fashion. One of the issues we have right now with Trump's policies in regards to the economy is that basically everybody is, I don't want to say everybody's lying. Oh, I do want to say that, but I probably shouldn't say that. Everybody is obfuscating. And so what obfuscating is basically it's where data isn't encrypted, it isn't hidden. It's just so convoluted. It's very difficult to understand what's going on. So I talked about this with the Trump administration. Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with jobs numbers that Trump didn't like, and so he fired the head of the BLS. Because that's what you do when you get numbers you don't like, right? I've talked about this before again with the corporations. Corporations, right? So much of the money, so much of their value comes from shareholders, comes from the value of their stock. And so a lot of these companies, even if they're going through distress, they don't really want to admit that it's happening because then they're worried that the shareholders, the people who own the stock, will do a sell-off, sell the stock, and the value of the stock will go down. You have a lot of just people out there that, just don't want to admit to reality. And so we get into a weird place for people like me because as I talk about, right, is the world is just the world. Numbers are numbers. This stuff just works out how it works out. And so what's really weird is you see these policies put into action, and then more or less what the ramifications should be, but then nobody admits to the ramifications, and then everybody calls you the moron. And you're like, no, but look, if you increase the cost of an input by 30%, you're going to increase the cost to the customer to buy that product. Now, again, there are some fuzzy numbers in there about how much does the item actually cost, from the distributor, and then what is the profit margin by the retailer. And so 30% of wholesale cost might not have to equal out to 30% increase in cost to the customer, But yeah, I mean, if the retailer, if the service provider or whatever has to spend 30% more on inputs, they're going to have to charge more to the customer. Like fuck me, this is not PhD level economics here. I'm not sitting back with a pipe and some sports coat on, trying to go on about, I don't know, John Smith or whatever economic policy. Pretty fucking simple. Increase the cost of inputs, cost to customer goes up. But anyways, all right, and that's the issue that we get into. And then as I talk about, as cost to customer goes up, then customers, actually start getting priced out, right? There is a limit to how much you'll spend. As I talk, I have an M2 MacBook Pro here. I have an M2 MacBook Pro, right? Oh my God, I spent $3,000 on a MacBook Pro. That's ridiculous. And I say, $3,000 for my daily driver that'll last me a few years. That is nothing in the real world. If it's $3,500, yeah, I'd still spend $3,500 on a MacBook Pro. If it's $4,000, probably keep my MacBook Pro for another year. If it's like $6,000 for a MacBook Pro, even Eli the Computer Guy at a certain point, like, well, fuck it. Hey, Lewis, how's your Lenovo doing? Let me try out some Lenovo. Oh no, Lenovo would be getting tariffs too. Anyways, right, there's a certain point that you price people out. And if you price people out, then customers aren't actually selling products. And if they're not selling products, then they can't afford employees, they can't afford warehouse space, blase, 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 blase. Simply as customers start pulling back on the amount of money that they're spending, right? That affects businesses. Lazy, a pure American company. Apparently their profits are down by 14% this year because I don't know why. The economy, under Trump's economy, things are going better than ever. Even as lazy boys, profits drop by 14%. Restaurants' profits drop. All these companies' profits are dropping. But it's an amazing economy. Anyways, the big issue that I have with what's going on is it's very difficult to get hard numbers and really understand what is going on, right? Are the manufacturers actually eating the cost, right? The tariffs go up. Trump says the manufacturers, right? Those countries are eating the cost. And here's the thing, they can probably eat some of the cost, right? Or on the other hand, when the product comes in, right, there is a profit margin there. Maybe the companies here that are doing the importing, maybe they eat some of the cost. But, it's this very weird, just mush. It's mush. But then thankfully, Sony comes out of left field to give us some numbers that we can actually work with, and we can start to see how Trump's policies are actually going to be affecting things. In the worst, in the absolute worst way possible. PlayStation 5 price changes in the US. So this is coming from Sony's blog. This is actually Sony's blog that is saying this. And Sony is coming out swinging to say the price of PS5s is going to go up. Similar to many global businesses, we continue to navigate a challenging economic environment. As a result, we've made the difficult decision to increase the recommended retail price for PlayStation 5 consoles in the US starting August 21st. The updated recommended retail price for PS5 consoles in the US are as follows. PS5, the standard one, is now $549. PlayStation 5 Digital Edition is $499. PlayStation 5 Pro, that new Pro thing that came out, is now $750. Holy back crap. If you wonder why the older generations laugh at the younger generations, it's because you have video game consoles and they got $750. Holy shit. Anyways, you might not be able to afford a house. Not even sure how you afford a PlayStation console anymore. Anyways, the recommended retail prices for the PlayStation 5 accessories remain unchanged, and we have no other price changes to announce for additional markets. So I think it's interesting to see here, as far as I've been able to figure out, this looks like a $50 increase across the line. So the actual percentage increase per device is different, right? So if the digital edition was $450, it's now going up to $500. Then that's something like a 15%, 13 to 15% price increase, which is pretty significant. Now, if you look at the PlayStation, right, if it goes from $500 to $550, that's a 10% increase. In the PlayStation 5, if it's going from $700 to $750, then you get down to like a 7 or 8% increase. And that's one of the issues you run into with this whole tariffs, and then how companies decide to change your prices or whatever. Like you'll notice with that, right? So if you buy the lower value PlayStation, the digital edition, the percentage of the cost going up is actually like almost double what the percentage of cost of the PlayStation 5 Pro is going up, even though the PlayStation 5 Pro is a hell of a lot more expensive. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more of this come down the pike, basically as the tariffs finally set in and companies have to figure out how to maintain profitability, how to maintain actually being successful in this weird ass economic environment. And I do wonder how it's all going to work out at the end of the day. As I talk about, like with computers. How much are computers going to cost, right? With Tim Cook, bribing Trump. In my opinion, it seems like Tim Cook bribed Trump. But think about this, right? So if Apple can claim that they're going to invest $500 billion in the United States, whether or not they actually do. I really want to put that on the table. Remember Foxconn? I think it was in Wisconsin. I remember Foxconn. Anyways, so they claim that they're going to put $500 billion into the country, and therefore they get to bypass a lot of the tariffs. right? But then you have other companies that may be smaller or may not have any damn reason to invest in the United States, just how their systems work, and then they're going to be paying full freight on tariffs, right? The Trump administration, literally, Trump came out and was literally talking about 200% to 300% tariffs on chips, on the silicon. What is that going to mean? And so again, you look at this and you're thinking about, okay, well, PS5s, who the hell cares? But if you're the IT director of a decent sized company, you got 1,000, let's say you have 1,000 employees and you do a refresh cycle every few years, right? 1,000 employees times $50, let's say, that's an additional $50,000 that's coming out of your budget. And that's if it's only $50, right? Think about all the networking equipment, all the other electronic equipment that comes in from overseas. That can be a very significant pain point for prices and that type of deal. And so that's where I think it's important right now to start thinking, if you're the decision maker in your company, it's time to start thinking about tariff mitigation strategies, which I don't really think is actually going to be better for the United States. I think it's going to be worse for the United States at the end of the day. But in order to make your company survive, it's things that you have to think about, right? So let's say refresh cycles. So for a lot of companies, refresh cycles, the idea is you get in the new computers, right? You wipe and reload them, you re-image them or whatever. You transfer the data from the old computer to the new computer, and then the old computer basically gets donated, right? Because it takes time, right? The normal IT professional, so like a desktop support technician, when they're in the office, cost the company somewhere on the order of $50 an hour, $50+ an hour, right? So they have their crappy salary, plus their crappy benefits, plus all of the insurance and taxes that the company has to pay for them on top of what they actually see. And then you look at facilities costs and a whole bunch of other costs. And basically you're looking at a minimum of $50 an hour for that employee. So you think about it, right? If you have a computer come in, you do the wipe and reload, you swap them out, right? That's a very streamlinable process. If, on the other hand, you start worrying too much about this old computer, right? At $50 an hour, that starts to add up. Think about this again, like if you have 1,000 people, if you have 1,000 employees, right? Every hour, each one of those, if you have to touch a computer, that ends up being like $50,000 in total for the company. One of the things to start considering, though, is in this new world where the cost of hardware is going to go up, do you need to start reassessing how things like hardware gets reassigned in your company? Who actually gets the latest and greatest hardware? So like in a lot of companies, basically seniority, right? You've been at the company the longest, you get the new fancy computer, right? It's just an easy way of doing things. One of the things to consider nowadays is, yeah, but do you actually need that new fancy computer? Okay, this is the director at a company, or this is an executive in the company. They've had their computer for 4 years. But if all they're doing is email, all they're doing is Salesforce, all they're doing is some pretty crappy stuff, why give them that high quality new laptop that's coming in? Maybe that would be more effective to be giving frankly to the marketing intern, because they're trying to create images and graphics and that kind of stuff that can actually use that modern GPU that's sitting in that laptop. And so one of the things to be thinking about right now is things like, how do you actually allocate hardware resources? How do you think about that overall refresh process for your company? Is it time as a company to start looking at places like backmarket.com to buy computers, right? You can go buy backmarket.com, buy 100, 200 computers from some other company that went out of business. Maybe you save $400 per computer. They're used computers, but they might be like 2-year-old computers, which is fine. As I've said, a 2023 computer is fine for almost every damn thing out there. Maybe that's one of those things to start considering, right? The good old-fashioned like A+ level computer support, basically went out of style about a decade ago because the cost of hardware simply dropped to be almost nothing, right? That's when I had my computer repair shop, right? That was the thing, right? We were charging $150 to $200 for a lot of repairs for computers. The cost of computers dropped to like $400 or $500. So people are like, well, I can either spend $200 on this computer that's 2 years old already, or I can spend $400 and get a brand new computer. There's a whole bunch of arguments with that, but that's what they look at. I can get a new computer for $400. And so that's what they decided to do. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations decide to do that too. It's not worth the repair effort, right? I only ever worked at one company that had a dedicated, true hardware department, right? There were two guys. Now we're in a room about as big as this with just piles of laptops, and they did old school Louis Rossmann stuff on Toshiba laptops, pulling the damn things apart, resoldering capacitors, doing that kind of stuff. I worked in one company that did that simply because the company found it to be valuable. They purchased really high quality business class laptops at the time. And so what they found is simply in-house repairing those things was less expensive than swapping them out. I mean, when you're spending $2,000 or $3,000 per laptop back in the day for these things, it actually made a lot of sense. So it is something to kind of be considering nowadays. Is it time to start investing in more physical hardware repair services in your company, especially if you have a decent size company? Things to be pondering, things to be thinking about. So anyways, PlayStation 5 prices are going up by $50. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? Does that make you happier about Trump's policies? Is this how Trump's policies, are supposed to work out? You're like, Eli, this is going to force Sony to start manufacturing PlayStation 5s in the United States. Like when you see this, how confident are you that Sony is going to be moving their manufacturing to the United States? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. If you don't, give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing. Call me a moron. Call me an amazing moron. Or a moron amazing? I don't know. All that matters in the YouTube world is that interaction. And with that, see y'all later.